on WCIA 3 Plus. With your host, Stu Ellis. This is From the Farm.
Hello again, everyone, and certainly welcome you to a program a little different than what we've had before. Many times we've provided some videos to you that are interesting. Today we have also something very interesting. We have a guest in the studio, somebody who is special. Would like to invite you to welcome to Illinois Dr. Matt Vann. He is the new Associate Dean in the College of ACES at the University of Illinois and Director of Extension. And so Matt is going to be the chief programming person and leader of the pack when it comes to all the extension activities in Illinois. And great to have you. We just met here 5 minutes ago. We almost met at the Farm Progress Show.
Close.
And our paths may have crossed someplace, but it just didn't happen. So it's a delight to meet you.
A delight to meet you as well, Stu. My pleasure to be here. And yeah, it was great to be at the Farm Progress Show. There was a lot of a wow factor that was there, but it was also a busy time. So I'm sure we crossed paths, but it's good to spend some time with you today.
A lot of folks would like to know, they might say, you have a Southern accent. Tell us a little bit about where you come from. It's from not around here.
That is correct. Southern accent, and I will say not Southern Illinois. That is one thing I'm learning. When people say down south here, it does not mean the southeastern U.S. We're talking about Southern Illinois. So, yeah, I was born and raised in rural north central Florida. I grew up in Lafayette County, which is a very, again, small kind of farm-based agrarian county. And even today, there's about 8,000 or 9,000 people that live in the county. So, you know, the farm community and sort of the rural lifestyle was something that I grew up accustomed to. I'm ninth generation Floridian, so for those that may have spent time in Florida, we do exist. Not everybody is relatively new to the state. So yeah, my whole family's there. I grew up there. In 2009, I completed my undergraduate degree at the University of Florida and moved to Raleigh, North Carolina, where I enrolled in the graduate school at NC State University. So that began my path in North Carolina, and I've spent the last 16 years there, grad student, faculty member, moving into some leadership roles, and then now here we are in Urbana-Champaign.
You do, though, have an Illinois connection, I understand.
I do. So to be very transparent, my wife is from Henry County. Still have family there in Geneseo. And I will say that the connection there to Geneseo and folks in Atkinson and Anawan, to throw out some of those towns, that connection is really what started, I think, this journey that ultimately brought us back here to Illinois. Admittedly, I think I had been to Illinois one time before I met my eventual wife. And now, you know, prior to the move here, you know, we were here 2 or 3 times a year for various functions, holidays, etc. And you know, it was sort of this kind of wear and tear over time of really seeing what Illinois has to offer that I developed this deep appreciation for the state. And lo and behold, an opportunity arises for us to sort of come back home, and here we are today.
When you applied for the position and were interviewed by Dean Herman Bolero at the College of ACES, what did he ask you and what did you say?
So he asked what my vision was, and I told the dean that I had a very simple vision, and that was to make Illinois Extension the most visible division or visible group within the state. And sort of out of that, we wanted the citizens of Illinois to use Illinois Extension as their go-to #1 resource for all sorts of information, whatever that may be.
And that apparently was sold him on that.
I think so.
Sold
yes,
him on
sir.
you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah, it worked out really well. You know, the dean has this vision for one college better together. And I think with my background working in North Carolina Cooperative Extension, and my father was a county extension agent in Florida.
Okay.
So seeing those two extension systems and really how they functioned at two different times in my life, I think there were some translational things that fit into that one college better together, and how we meld, the academic component of what happens within ACES, the research component of what happens within ACES, and then what extension brings to the table to really be the sort of cotter pin, linchpin for all of that to come together. And again, that's not just within ACES, that's across the campus in totality, and then what we do off campus, which is probably even more important than what we do on campus.
There may be a lot of folks who might be watching who say, well, extension is just for agriculture. It's not just for agriculture, but before we get to those, let me say, where do you see agriculture fitting into this? Because your father, as an extension agent, probably his biggest clientele were farmers.
Absolutely. So, I think when you look really at the land grant mission, and again, extension being one of the three legs of the land grant mission, and we go back to the 1860s when we talk about the birth of this initiative.
Right.
The goal was to take information developed at universities and translate it for the general good of the citizens. And you go back to that era, and certainly agriculture is the backbone of it. And I honestly believe that in modern times, agriculture continues to be the backbone of that. And for the simple fact of, if we don't have food, we don't eat, and if we don't eat, we got a lot of problems. So again, I believe that agriculture is going to be a huge part of that, but it can't be just ag. I remember as a youth in 4-H and FFA, the common thing that I heard then, and we're talking early, mid, late 90s in some of my more formative years, we used to say that FFA and 4-H are not just cows, plows, and sows.
Right.
We have to have that mentality in extension too. We know that there are urban programs that may not necessarily be exposed to what we would call traditional commercial agriculture, but there are avenues to get youth and other folks involved through a lot of our programs. We certainly have programs like, again, youth development with 4-H. Obviously, there's a big component of agriculture there when you look at sort of our livestock shows and what that brings. But again, it's so much more than just the traditional programs that we think about. We've got FCS programs. There's just a whole diversity of things that we do within Extension, and that's the beauty of it. It's not just the agriculture that we touch. Again, that's a huge part. That's a serious part that we focus on. But it's so much more than that. There's just a lot that we can do, and that's the power of Extension. It can touch everybody.
And we're going to talk about some of those things when we come back. And don't go away. We've got a lot more in our conversation with Dr. Matt Vann, the new Director of Extension for University of Illinois. We welcome you back, and Matt Vann of the new Director of Extension is our guest today. And Matt, we were talking about agriculture, and I know we'd mentioned the Farm Progress Show. One of the things that I was doing when I was the unit leader in the Macon County Extension Office, had a good friend who was the manager of the County Farm Bureau, and the two of us collaborated and were able to bring Farm Progress Show to a permanent site in Decatur. And some people were saying, do you do that? Was he supposed to do that as head of Farm Bureau, and you were supposed to do that as head of Extension? Well, no, not really. That was not in our job description. But it's the opportunity to work within the community, to collaborate with others, to see what a problem is and come up with a solution and put it out to solve a need.
I think that's a really good way to describe Extension in a nutshell. If you have somebody who's not familiar with Extension, I think the description you gave would be absolutely perfect. And it's really about, again, the identifying the needs and providing a service and the outreach to meet and address those needs. And again, a credit to you for bringing such a wonderful event to Decatur. That was my first Farm Progress Show back in August. and I had been exposed to the Sun Belt Ag Expo down in Moultrie, Georgia.
Right.
I think probably kind of a similar scale, but when you look at the footprint of what the Sun Belt Ag Expo represents, it's like 5 or 6 states in the Southeast.
Right.
And then you come here and we've got, certainly Illinois represented and maybe some touch points in Indiana and Iowa. So maybe a little smaller footprint geographically, but same size and scale. So a very, very impressive operation. So hats off for a job well done.
Well, I appreciate that, but something that allows Extension to address some issues in the community. It may not happen in one community, but it may happen in another. And we had a large factory that suddenly closed down in Decatur. Of course, we had within the unit, the Extension unit, we had some business development people who will help folks build a business and create one if they wanted to. But they weren't ready to take care of 4,000 people who suddenly didn't have a job. But within Extension allowed us to create a new program for helping folks find a job, see what their abilities were to sell themselves, and that's something that we did, and any county can address a problem through the Extension system.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So that's another great example of sort of the nimble characteristics in which we operate.
Right.
And again, I think that goes back to us seeing needs within a community.
Mm-hmm.
And some of these needs may be things that are sort of ongoing and longer term, and then you have these immediate needs that tend to crop up overnight. And again, that's the beauty of Extension. We see the need, we work on programming, and then we've got resources back here on campus that we can tap into to try to help develop curriculum or develop programs that can specifically focus on the issue at hand and not just focus on some of the broader topics.
Right. One of the topics that I know that has been very successful has been the nutrition education program. And we had 9 ladies who were just excited to be able to go out and meet with hundreds of clients to teach them a new recipe. And I remember following one day, she took a quart of milk, a bunch of strawberries, a quart of ice cream, and she showed a mother how to create a low-calorie, nutritious milkshake for her kids. And it was fairly inexpensive. Mm-hmm. And this mother just never had an inkling of how you could do that to make her kids happy and still give them something healthy. And those programs in the SNAP program are suffering right now from some federal cuts.
Correct.
And I'm assuming that we've lost those 217 workers throughout the state who are doing that. What can Extension do to help nutrition in those communities now?
So great question, and you're absolutely right. We're seeing the end of the SNAP Ed program, which is extremely unfortunate because we see the end of this program, but it doesn't mean that the needs have ended and we've reached the end of that life cycle. So what we're doing now is sort of working strategically with some of our folks on campus to sort of re-envision what we can do as an Extension organization to maybe recycle or upcycle some of the programs that we saw a lot of benefit with, some of the programs, to your credit, that we see the impact with and what they do in these communities. So we're working strategically. We've got a task force put together that's going to sort of re-envision what we can take from what was the SNAP Ed program, incorporate it into some of our FCS program, and then again try to move forward with some of those programs maybe in a little bit different way, but ultimately still try to circle back to provide the information and programming that some of these communities and individuals so desperately need.
Can we get education going to the home, or will people have to come to an office?
That's a good question as well. So I think that some of that is probably still up for discussion and really how it's going to evolve. My vision, at least up front, would be we're probably going to focus on the office standpoint while we sort of re-evolve and co-evolve with some of the other programs that exist. We may get to an endpoint where we can go back into some of the homes and do some of that work, but I think we're going to have to give ourselves just a little bit of a runway to figure out, okay, what's funding going to look like? What does some of the landscape look like for opportunities that may exist? There are some initiatives coming from the federal government, particularly with the Make America Healthy Again initiative that we may be able to tap into. And are these programs that are going to be completely new? Will they have some semblance of what SNAP-Ed was? I don't know that we 100% know just yet. But again, our focus is going to be finding a way to go back into these communities and work with these individuals to provide, some of this information. Again, there's no real discussion point that SNAP-Ed unfortunately is done. We just have to find the way to sort of reutilize what was there, again, to meet the needs that we have.
I heard just yesterday, and I can't. Well, the date would have been the 23rd, if you're depending on when you're watching the program, that USDA was limiting the types of food that would be eligible for food stamp programs, and so I'm assuming that if there's going to be a little section of a grocery store where food stamps can be applied, that there may be an opportunity for extension folks to work in a site at that location to say, hey, here's an idea for using this item, and that item, and putting it together into a healthy meal or snack.
Absolutely. Yeah, and again, I think that's part of this evolution of sort of our modern times of, again, what's happening at different levels, sort of throughout society. And again, working on site, I think that'll be a great opportunity for direct one-on-one engagement. But also, sort of spinning out of that, you have opportunities to reach folks today in a little different way. We think about the technology that we have access to. We also think that folks could be in those particular aisles or sections of a grocery store, pull up a cell phone, and you may have some virtual options, digital options to look at that may be a little more cost effective than having folks one-on-one. But at the end of the day, we want to find the happy medium, thread the needle where we have in-person programming, because the one-on-one interaction is the most important interaction that we can have, but also the digital things that are just convenient. I can get home at 9 o'clock at night and pull up an extension article at my leisure, and I would like to think other folks can do that as well. So we want to have opportunities to touch folks in a diversity of ways, in a diversity of places, and again, the benefits of modern technology would allow us to do that. So I didn't mean to maybe curtail where that was going, but I wanted to incorporate some of the different ways that we can reach folks beyond our traditional one-on-one, face-to-face opportunities.
I think maybe a lot of those potential clients will have a cell phone.
Sure.
And an education, a little bit of education is, here's where you can find that recipe, and here's where I think that's a fabulous idea. So we'll look forward to more of that.
Good.
We haven't talked about 4-H,
yes,
and we're going to be doing that in just a moment. Please don't go away. We're going to talk about your kids in a moment. And we welcome you back to our conversation with Dr. Matt Vann, the new Director of Extension for University of Illinois. We've talked a little bit about agriculture. We've talked about some business and economic development. We've talked a little bit about food and nutrition. The food and nutrition is part of FCS, Food and Consumer Sciences, Family
Consumer Sciences.
Family Consumer Sciences. Yep. There we go. And so, but that is a major part of Extension.
Absolutely. And I would say let's walk back in time a little bit. You look at some of the early Extension initiatives probably outside of traditional commercial agriculture, and you see a lot of initiatives to teach homeowners how to can tomatoes and how to process food. And then we see this evolution over time of budgeting for the household. And I can remember as a child there was an initiative to get children into car seats and giving away car seats through some of those programs through Florida Cooperative Extension. So again, that kind of touches sort of outside of more of our traditional ag programs, but has its hands in a lot of different places on what I might consider to be the home front.
That's and the kids are part of that, and the folks who can see. I'm not sure whether they can see the little 4-H emblem on your shirt. I think the microphone may be in the way, but I think everybody's familiar with 4-H.
We'll get it. There we go.
There we go.
Clover right there.
Okay. There's a lot of kids in this state. They're in 4-H programs,
Yes.
and come fair time in the summer, why there's tens of thousands of 4-H kids that show up at county fairs with their project.
Yep, absolutely, and it goes beyond just the county fairs. There's summer camps, and then there's there's shooting clubs and all kinds of opportunities that our youth have. But 4-H is, again, Illinois 4-H is a big deal, as you said.
Right.
But it's a great opportunity to give youth, the chance to be exposed to different things. And I have the belief as a 4-H'er myself, that 4-H starts to plant seeds in a lot of the youth, and we have the chance to sort of grab the youth by the arm and show them what sits in front of them in terms of opportunities for development and eventually future careers. So again, we continue to invest in 4-H, and we see a lot of good outcomes when we think about those opportunities to engage with youth. The nice thing about 4-H is it gives Illinois Extension, because 4-H is a huge component of Extension. They are sort of one and the same, but it gives our educators opportunity to say, hey, here's the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. Here's opportunities that exist there. Here's opportunities in agriculture. Here's opportunities within, again, programs like FCS. Teaches them life skills. And we know that youth that go through 4-H programs are, less likely to drop out of school. They're less likely to lead unhealthy lifestyles. So I have the belief, and I believe that the state of Illinois has a belief, that if we can get in front of youth with 4-H programming, that we're going to set them up to have a better chance at being successful in life.
Well, I can remember my 4-H programs were, number one, managing the family garden. That was suddenly it. Then raising some hogs.
Sure.
And doing some photography work and some forestry. And then when I got into working with Extension, suddenly there was a robotics club, and I couldn't figure out where does that come in. Really, anything and everything could come in if it has an opportunity at the end to educate a kid, to get their attention, to provide an opportunity for a future.
Yep.
And there's probably a lot of jobs that stem from a 4-H project.
Sure. It does, and if it goes beyond that, there are certain skills that the youth have the opportunity to learn and develop. Again, I think about public speaking opportunities.
Bingo.
Opportunities, exhibiting livestock. We had to keep record books, so there were these opportunities to learn about budgets and record keeping and sort of telling your story of what you did from start to finish with your hog or your steer or whatever it was. And again, so it goes beyond just those things into robotics as you use as an example, but there are so many life lessons and life skills that we can give youth that ultimately have a positive influence. And my belief is, whatever the program is, we're going to give a thumbs up to, as long as we can talk about tangible positive influences and outcomes for our youth.
You mentioned public speaking, and I forgot about this until just now. The first night I was at a 4-H club meeting, we were to stand up, we were to give a short public speech. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know who I was, I didn't even know anybody around me, but my folks were told, have Stuart ready to give a speech. Well, I couldn't. I was in 4th grade. I didn't know anything about making a speech. My dad wrote a speech for me on renting farm machinery. And I got up on a hay bale in front of a bunch of people I didn't know and read off this little speech about renting farm machinery. And that, when I was 9 years old, was the first time I got into public speaking. And I've been doing it for
A while.
75
Yes, sir.
years.
Yes, sir.
Well, 65 years anyway.
Sure.
And so it set me
There you
on not only on that hay bale, but it set me up for a career.
Yep, same here. One of my first experiences with public speaking was with a 4-H program called Florida Hog and Ham. So you raise a hog and then take it to the university,
Right.
and you actually went through the killing and meat processing component of that. Afterwards, there was a presentation about some aspect of the pork industry in Florida, and very similar experience, probably about the same age, given that first presentation. And I remember being scared to death in front of a bunch of strangers,
Right.
had note cards,
Uh-huh.
and really deferred to the note cards. And I remember at the end of it, my mother said, you weren't supposed to read directly off the note cards. They were there for reference. And again, it just kind of started this process where here we are today, maybe 30 years later, public speaking every day. And it's, again, the process, the development, the opportunity that 4-H offered.
Man, we appreciate your help here today. A delight to meet you. Look forward to the next time. I've had some
Absolutely.
fun here today.
Me as well, and I very much appreciate the opportunity to be here with you, Stu.
And we thank you for being with us too. I'm Stu Ellis. Come back again.